Out of all the terrors of a Star Wars galaxy, none have matched the sheer power and horror that are the Dark Lords of the Sith. Considered by many to be the ancient enemy of the Jedi, the Sith have been one of the most consistent aspects of the entire Star Wars franchise, appearing in not just the films but also books, comics, video games, and more. Though who are these sorcerers of darkness, these perversions of the Jedi Order? Let's find out as we do a deep dive into the greatest evil in the Star Wars galaxy, the Dark Lords of the Sith. Before we talk about their history in-universe, it is important to talk about their history out of the universe as well. The Sith have been an early concept of Star Wars, going back to some of George Lucas's earliest drafts of the original 77 film, when it was the heroic Jedi Ashla against the evil Sith Bogan. The Sith, since day one, was always considered to be a dark faction of the Jedi Order, as well as their ancient rival. Darth Vader himself being a Dark Lord of the Sith goes back to the original 77 film as well, although that clarification was cut from an extended scene of a conference room of Tarkin and the other Imperial leaders. It would not be until Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, that the term Sith was finally used on screen for the first time to describe not only Darth Maul, but also Emperor Palpatine himself, who was revealed to be the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. Now with this in mind, let's really dive into the in-universe history of these dark forces. While the Jedi Order's history spans back 25,000 years, its dark side younger sibling only goes back to 5,000 years before the start of the Skywalker saga. While not much is known at the time of this video, the main story goes like this. A rogue Jedi interested in expanding his knowledge of the Force began to tap into the mysteries of the dark side and slowly began to be consumed by them. As his power grew, he began to spread his teachings to various other Jedi who were interested in learning more than just about the light side and the perceived dogmatic Jedi ways. Eventually, this caused a schism within the Order, which led to an event known as the 100-Year Darkness. The Jedi would eventually win and banish the rogue Jedi and his followers to the planet Korriban. From there, the rogue Jedi and his followers would create the Order of Sith Lords and build the first of what would be many Sith empires. From 5000 to 1000 BBY, the Jedi and Sith would go into several conflicts with one another. In Legends, there were many Dark Lords of the Sith in the past, some even rivaling Vader and the Emperor in terms of power and skill. Marco Raganos, leader of the Sith Empire in its golden age, Freedon Nad, tyrant king of Onderon, Exar Kun, chosen successor of the Sith of old, Revan, fall Jedi who returned to the light, and Emperor Vitiate, God Emperor of the mightiest Sith Empire of all. Many of these Sith were fierce enemies of the Jedi Order and appeared in many wonderful stories and legends, such as the Tales of the Jedi and the Knights of the Old Republic games. So now the big question you're probably asking yourself is, how come in the movies we've only seen two Sith? Well, that's because while the Sith did once number in the thousands in the ancient past, they had one weakness: greed. For a Sith, their greatest enemy was not a Jedi, but a fellow Sith. And when the Sith numbers were high, they would always find themselves in civil war and strife, killing one another. This would last until 1,000 years before Phantom Menace, when the last surviving Sith Lord, Darth Bane, decided there would only be two Sith at a time from now on, a master and an apprentice, one to wield the power and one to crave it. The rule of two was one where the apprentice must be strong enough to kill the master, and only then could they take on the role themselves. Thus, by the time we get to Episode 1, we see Sidious as the master and him going through 3 apprentices: Maul, Dooku, and finally Anakin. Of course, while there can only be one apprentice, the Sith can take on various acolytes to do their bidding as well. These beings are Force wielders who use the dark side, but are never fully trained to become true Sith as an apprentice would. However, there have been some occasions when an acolyte and Sith apprentice take on the master, then the acolyte becomes the apprentice. It was also during the time of the Rule of Two that Sith, or Bane Sith as Legends fans would call them, changed tactics on how to take over the galaxy and obtain power as well. Gone were the days of Sith rallying armies to conquer planets and build an empire. Instead, the Sith would hide in the shadows, biding their time, fueling rebellions, causing chaos wherever they could, and waiting for the perfect time when the Jedi and Republic are at their weakest to strike. This was a strategy simply known as the Grand Plan that would one day lead to the Sith's ultimate victory against the Jedi. The Grand Plan of the Sith hiding in shadows was best shown in the Legends novel Plagueis, written by legendary author James Luceno. The book showed Sith Lord Plagueis going around in his alternate persona Hugo Damask, being a powerful banker and using money and politics to influence the galaxy. He would pass on these tools to his apprentice, a very young Sheev Palpatine, who would himself use politics to eventually become Emperor of the Galaxy and rule for almost 2 decades into power and darkness. However, all dark things die, and thankfully so did the Sith. For in the shadowy Sith world of Exegol, Palpatine tried one more time to rise to power, but was defeated by his granddaughter, Rey, ending him and the Sith legacy once and for all, at least for now. As for grander details of the Sith, they are a very ruthless lot, normally wanting one thing: unlimited power! And will do anything to get it. They give in to the dark side of the Force using their anger and hatred to fuel them. Their powers include Force choking and Sith lightning, the former of which is normally used by powerful Sith masters who are quite consumed by the dark side of the Force. Sith carry red lightsabers and only red lightsabers, compared to the Jedi's multiple colors. Unlike Jedi, the Sith do not receive kyber crystals to power their blades, but instead take them from enemies they have slayed and bleed them red, fueling the crystal with the Sith's pain and anguish. We see this very display of power in the Charles Soule Vader comic from 2017. A Sith would have to give themselves fully to the dark side, and in some cases would even change their name to embrace their Sith identity. Sith would also normally build great fortresses and temples such as Vader's castle on Mustafar, which was designed based on ancient Sith architecture of old. Like the Jedi, they would also wear robes but in black, and sometimes helmets as well, such as Anakin to Darth Vader, just to strike fear in the hearts of their enemies. The Sith have always been the ancient enemy of the Jedi, and even though they seem to be finally destroyed at the end of Rise of Skywalker, it is unknown if the Sith are ever truly gone. It is possible that one day, some weary Jedi or some unknown Force user might stumble upon their evil teachings once again, and once again plunge the galaxy into darkness as they try to resurrect the Dark Lords of the Sith.